Apparently I'm live now. Anyway, so this is not going to be very professional in any stretch of the imagination, but it's my very first live stream on YouTube, so I don't really know how this is going to go. But basically the idea is I'm going to try and code Tetris in vanilla JavaScript. And I'm probably only going to get so far into it before I decide to stop. And then I'm just going to start another live stream maybe next week or something, and then keep doing that until it's complete. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started doing this. So, and by the way, this is not a tutorial either. This is just, I'm going to be coding this and talking about it as I go along. So let's do this. I'm going to need to open a new window over here. Cool. So let's see. Let's go to Google Images and check some stuff out. Let's see. I think what I want to do perfect. And then I want to do Tetris pieces. Okay. So let me go ahead and create an index.html file, a script.js file, and then a style.css file. And I'm going to go ahead and write a few notes down. So let's see. This grid is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 by, well, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. So it's 10 by 22. I don't know if that's every Tetris grid, but this is the one I decided to pick. And then let's look at the blocks. I'm going to name these, I guess, because I'm going to need to reference them in code. So like I'm going to need to come up with some sort of alias for each of these, I guess. This blue one, this light blue one here, it's kind of like a cerulean. I'm going to call this an I block because it kind of looks like the letter I, sort of. I block. And it's light blue. This kind of looks like the letter J, like a capital J, so I'll call it J block, dark blue. This is like a capital L, so L block, orange. This is, I guess, like the letter O, kind of. O block is yellow. This, that doesn't really look like any letter. Well, I'll come back to that one in a second. So this is like a Z block. That's red. That kind of looks like a T. T block, purple. And then, honestly, I don't know what to call this block. I'm going to take a quick look at the live stream. If you guys have an idea of what to call this block, let me know. I don't even know if anybody's on. Okay, so we do have some people on at the moment. What should I call that block? Someone in the chat. Let's see what you guys have. It is live. It is not a premiere. So the audio sounds good. Just waiting on the answer from the chat. Zed. Well, I already have a Z block, so. Reverse Z. All right, we'll call it reverse Z. Thank you, Orc. We'll go with that. Reverse Z. Easy enough. And that is green. Okay, cool. So I'm going to call it RZ for short. All right, so now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and like just build this grid out on the document. So open it with live server. And obviously there's nothing in this HTML document yet, so I'm going to start doing that stuff that I love to do. Code, woohoo. So I'm gonna say Tetris for the title, so we get this cool little, no, we definitely don't. Why isn't it? I don't know. Maybe I need to reserve it. Yeah, okay. So might as well go ahead and throw in a link tag for CSS and a script tag for the JavaScript. So go ahead and knock that out. And I'm going to create a div that is going to have an ID of grid. And this is going to be the container I'm thinking for. It's just going to be this whole thing, the container for all these things. Now, the way that I'm thinking about it is like this grid is going to have rows, and each row is going to have units. So I'm thinking that I'm going to, instead of just writing this all out like div row, and then inside of here div units, and then just making this a 400 line HTML document, I think I'm going to generate this with JavaScript. And also that seems to make sense to me because I'm probably going to want to represent this grid as some sort of two-dimensional array in JavaScript. So like generating it in JavaScript just makes the most sense. And I feel like if there's a game loop, like a set interval, every second it redraws the grid, I'm already going to have to do this in JavaScript. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and call it a day on that HTML and move over to the script file. And let me just make sure my grid element is in there. Yep, it is there. Cool. So what am I going to do? Let's see. Let's go ahead and I'm going to write the grid out. So grid, and I said I'm going to do a two-dimensional array. So, let's do empty objects, 10 of them. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Is that 10? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then there's going to be 22 rows. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. All right. And because I'm a lazy programmer, I'm not going to sit here and count these all out. I'm just going to log the length of this. So console.log, make sure that it is 22. Save 22. So we have the correct amount of rows on there. And I think each of these items or each of these units is going to be represented as an object. And if there's nothing populating that unit, so if there's no piece in that, I'm going to probably just say it's an empty object like this. But if there is a piece populating that unit, I'm probably going to say that it's an object, something like it has like a type. Maybe it's like, that would be T for the T block. And then it would have a piece, which would be an array that represents the shape of the piece. And then maybe an ID. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. Okay. So the first thing I want to do probably is generate the grid. So I'm going to be thinking in terms of like functional programming. So there's going to be a function for every piece of functionality here. So I'm going to say const generate grid. And I want to call this function when the DOM content loads. So I'll just create an event listener on the document of DOM content loaded. Yeah, and then we'll call generate grid, which is going to loop through this grid. So yeah, grid.forEach. Let's try this. Grid.forEach unit, or actually row, because it's a two-dimensional array. Yeah. So then we can do row.forEach as well. And then when we're in this one, we're actually going to be on units. So, all right. So when I'm looping through the rows, what it is I want to do is grab the grid element. So const grid L equals document Get element by ID. Grid, I think, is the element ID. Yep, okay, cool. So grab that, and then I want to create a new element, which is going to represent our row. Const row L is equal to document.create element. And I'm guessing a div makes sense here. And let's add a class name to that. Class list add. Guess we can call it grid row. And then I want to put that row into the grid. So grid l.append child. And then I want to throw that row into there. And then I think I want to do the exact same thing here. But instead of row, we're on units now. So unit L. And we want it to be a div, and we want to change this to unit L as well. And grid unit. And instead of appending it to the grid element, I want to append it to the row element. And we want to append the unit L. And I don't think I want to push the row. I want it to be the row element. Yeah. All right, let's see what happens when I save this. Well, what do you know? We have all of these in there. They're not styled, so you can't really see them. I can get rid of these tabs now. Let's make it to where we can see them. So I need to write some CSS here. So what was it? It was grid row, grid unit, and grid. So we're gonna have a grid row, and a grid unit. And what do we think? I'm thinking like height and width of the unit, maybe like 50 pixels. Let's see, 50 pixels height, 50 pixels. Let's see what that looks like. I need to give it a border so we can see it. Let's say 1 pixel dotted gray, maybe. That's too big. 35. Let's try 35. That looks good. All right, so each unit also needs to be like display inline block. Nice. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and the row also needs the same height. Nice. Okay, so then the grid needs a margin of auto. That didn't do what I was hoping. Maybe I need to explicitly, wait a second. Oh, I know what it is. The grid needs a defined width. Okay, so the width is, I need a calculator. No, I don't, because there's 10, so 35 times 10 is 350 pixels. Okay, that breaks it because it's counting the borders as part of the width. So in reality, these are 37 pixels, but I can fix that by saying box sizing. Whoa. Border box. Boom. Then I want to make the margin top. Let's get some space going. 50 pixels, maybe? Ooh. Oh, that's, oops. Boom. That looks good. Cool. So we have the grid. I'm gonna check the chat really quick, the live stream. Let's see what we got. Just popping in to give you a thumbs up, man. Thank you. Thank you, Full Flex. All right, continuing on. What is the next step here? Okay, I think what we should do is create the pieces. So I've got this out of the way. I can just go ahead and delete that little comment, and now I can build these little pieces. So I think I'm gonna do arrays that represent the shape, but let's do objects actually. So let's start with the I block. No, let's start with the easiest one, the O block. And let's say it's an object and it contains a type, and the type is O, and the piece, or maybe shape, the shape will be an array that represents the shape, and it'll be a two-dimensional array that looks like this. Yeah. So let me go back to, I want to see these visually. I want to choose the exact image I was using. I think I was using this one. So yeah, that's what that looks like. Let's do the T next. Let's say const T block. And the type is equal to T, and the shape, two-dimensional array. So I'm thinking it would be like that. Yeah, you kind of see how that looks like that. Yeah, I think this is gonna work. Maybe, possibly, maybe not. I don't know. Const J block. And I'm basically just going to have to do this over and over again, so I might as well just copy this and paste it and replace the stuff. And then, so the J block, yeah, I want these to come in horizontally so that they're all two-dimensional arrays with a length of 2. Okay, yeah, so that is the J block. Let's do the L block, which is basically the J block, but in reverse. So I can just do that, it seems. Cool. Z block. Oh wait, not array, object. I should have just copied and pasted, but you know what, whatever. This one, I think, okay, so the Z block would be like 1, 1, 0, 0, 1, 1. Yeah, cool. And then the reverse Z block, or RZ block as we're going to call it. I think like, yeah, let's just do it like that. And then it's the same thing, but in reverse. Okay. Let's see, which one are we missing? We are missing the, there's 7 total. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. O, T, J, L, Z, R, Z. I guess the I block. So const I block. Okay. Shape. Okay, this one's actually going to be interesting because they all need to have the same length, because we're going to be looping through, and I don't want to have a special case for this guy, but when it comes in horizontally, it's the only piece that's only one tall. Like it's one, it has a height of 1. So let's do this. Okay. Cool. So I have all of these. Now I just want to jump into the CSS and like set the colors for these guys. So I got the colors here. So I light blue, like aqua, or background color. Ooh, background color. I'm going to full screen this. So background color, I'm thinking aqua. And then we have the J block. So J, and I'm just going to copy and paste. Actually, just this part. I need to put dots before these. What am I thinking? Okay, background color J is dark blue, which is basically just blue. Then we have the L. Sorry, I know that this part is like really boilerplate, boring, but it has to be done. So L is gonna be orange. The O will be yellow. Z will be red. RZ. Ooh, glad I caught this. RZ will be green. And then finally, T will be purple. Let's make sure that there are 7 here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Cool. Okay. Looks like I can get rid of that stuff at the top. So now I have like a visual representation of what the pieces are going to look like, and I also have classes to distinguish them visually with a color. I think I can go ahead and so we need a set timeout, and there's probably a better way to do this. Like I think since set timeout, if I set it to like 1 second, here, this isn't the best way to do it, but it's a good way to prototype, and I'm going to start off by doing it this way. So every 1,000 milliseconds, we're going to run some function, and that's going to be the game loop, which is going to redraw the grid, and then either move the piece down because there's gravity in Tetris where it goes down, or set the piece, or generate a new piece, etc. Whatever happens whenever the game loop restarts. So this little number here, this 1,000 milliseconds, is equal to a second. And if you've ever played Tetris, it like gets faster as you play it. So this is going to eventually have to be a variable that changes based on some amount of time you've been playing or something. But for now, again, I'm just trying to prove this out, make sure this all makes sense. So I'm going to just like leave that as 1,000 for now. Generate grid is actually going to have to get called every game loop. So I'm going to rename this. Instead of generate grid, I'm gonna call it draw grid. Yeah, draw grid. Okay, so now every second it's gonna draw the grid, and we're gonna need we need to keep track of the current piece that's falling. So I'm gonna just create like a let current piece equal an empty object, and I need to say if there is a current piece, or if current piece dot ID, then if there is a current piece, essentially, then we want to say move down. Else we want to generate a new piece. So let's say generate new piece. And let's open the console over here, make sure that this is all making sense. Let's see, generate new piece. Well, obviously, I need to actually set the piece. So I would say something like const current piece is equal to, and then it has an ID of, I don't know, something like that. Wait, that was silly of me. Current piece is equal to, there we go. It doesn't look like it's actually, oh, set timeout. Gosh, I meant set interval. All right. Okay, so that is the behavior I would expect. It would generate a new piece, and then that piece would begin moving down. And then when it sets, we would then, like when it gets to the bottom and it can't move down anymore and it's done moving, we would then set current piece back to an empty object. And then this, it would then move back to this else statement where we would then generate a new piece. So we're going to need, okay, so we're going to need the ability to generate a random piece out of these guys. So to do that, I'm going to need to create an array. So we'll say pieces, all pieces, maybe all pieces. And it has to be an array of all these. So O block, T block, T block, Z block, RZ block, J block, L block, I block, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, that's all of them. And then I'm gonna need to have a function that picks one of these at random. So basically, I'm gonna Google that. So let's say random item from array JavaScript. It knew exactly what I was gonna. All right, let's. I use this plugin, by the way, guys. It's called Grepper, and I'm sure some of you have probably heard of it. But it basically, when you Google something in coding, it tries to find the answer for you, so you don't have to go search for it yourself. And this looks exactly like what it is I want to have. So yeah. So I'm going to create a function called generate, or we'll say grab, or yeah, generate random piece is a function, and I don't know, const random piece is equal to this. Change colors out with all pieces. Yep. And let me just log, let's see, random piece. Make sure that it's actually working, and I have to call it. Let's say I call it every, just to make sure it's working. Okay, so, okay, type O, type RZ, type O, type Z, type RZ, L, RZ. That's random enough for me for this use case. All right, perfect. So that is working good. So when we generate the random piece, what we need to do is then set the current piece equal to the random piece we generated. So that would be here. Current piece is equal to generate random piece. So then when I save this, it'll generate a random piece, and then it will start to move down. Move down. This says line 110, ID of undefined. Something's undefined. Let's find out what that is. Well, probably I'm logging it here. Definitely doesn't have an ID property. Oh, you know what? I need to get. Look at this. Grepper is amazing. So here's a function that will generate a UUID. So I'm going to need this function actually. And I'm going to convert this to my preferred syntax. And okay. This is starting to make sense to me, I think. So UUID should generate a random ID. I'll have to test that out in a second, but what we're gonna do is spread this out and then also add the ID, which will be equal to UUID. Save, it should log it. Nope. Okay, well, it doesn't break now. After I create it, now let's log it. Make sure that it has the ID and make sure, oh yeah. Make sure it's different each time. Yep, that is looking good. Although it just has an ID. That's weird. I did this wrong or something. So because the current piece only has an ID, it doesn't have the other properties that it's supposed to have. So let's see why. Oh, because I'm not returning it. Derp. All right, return random piece. Actually, just honestly, I don't need all this. I could just boom. Cool. So that should do it. Save. Let's see what we get now. Yeah, there we go. Now we get the piece and a unique identifier. Yes. All right. Okay, so now we have a random piece. Now we need to like put the piece on the grid. Am I there yet? Am I at that point, or do I want to? I think I am. So think about it. Think about it. Okay, so what we want to do is when we do generate the random piece, we want to put the piece on the grid. So let's say put piece on grid. And it will accept a piece, although it's sort of like I already have access to it here, so maybe I don't need to do that. So what we want to do is go through the grid and, oh man, this is where things are going to get kind of weird because I'm going to be doing code that might be ugly, but I haven't sat down and thought about how I'm going to do this, so it's not like this is not really going to necessarily be code that I'm proud of. I just want to make sure that it works. And then maybe later on reiterate over it and possibly even build a real tutorial on this if it actually works the way I'm hoping it does. So let's see. Put piece on grid. What I'm going to do is I'm going to loop through the grid. And okay, so let's start with that. Okay, well, I'm going to have to return a new grid. I don't want to mutate the grid because you're going to start having problems with references. I want to return a whole new grid. So let's say grid is equal to grid.map. So every time, no. Or yes. Yeah, let's do that. Let's start with this and then I might change it later. So grid.map, and then our two arguments here are going to be the row and the row index, which I might need, I don't know. And we can return a row.map. And the two items that we're going to have access to in here are going to be the unit and the unit index. Okay. So we're going to map through this and create a new grid with those piece objects inside of the grid rather than it just being all empty objects. So let's do that. I think when I generate a piece, we want to try to make it as close to the center horizontally as possible. So I'm going to start generating the piece or start drawing the piece right on the 1, 2, 3, 4th item on the 0th row. Yeah. So 0, 1, 2, 3 on the 0 row. Okay, let's do that. So let's do an if statement. If, this is not efficient code. This is not great code, but it's going to work, I think. If unit index, no, if row index is less than or equal to 2, no, is less than 2, because the longest horizontal piece, they're all 2. So we only are going to be drawing a piece on the first, when we first inject a piece into the grid, it's only going to be on the first 2 rows. So let's only do that. So let's say if row index is less than 2, and then and unit index, because we want to start drawing it on the 3rd or on the 4th. So we would say if unit index is greater than or equal to 0, 1, 2. Okay. And okay, the piece that we have, so current piece. All right, this is going to be kind of hard to explain in English. I hope you guys are understanding what I'm doing, but basically, so let's say I'm on this one. I'm looping through and I get here. Well, some of these pieces, you don't actually want to draw a block there because there's a 0 there. You only want to draw a block where there's a 1 there. But the length of these shape rows are not the same length as the grid. So I can't necessarily use the same index here to access it. So I kind of have to do some weird math. So I'm going to say if current piece row index, that's fine because we know the row length is only going to be either 0 or 1 because we're only looping through the first 2. This is where the weirdness comes in, which is going to be unit index minus 3, I think. So if that is a truthy value, so 0 is a falsy value. So if it's 0, it will not bump into this if statement, but if it's 1, it will bump into this if statement. If that's the case, then I want to return I want to return, what is it I want to return? I'm frying my brain here. So else I want to go ahead and return an empty object. I already know that. But in the case that there is something there, if it is a 1, then I want to do this, and then I want to set the ID equal to piece ID, like current piece ID, or maybe current piece. Maybe I just set it equal to current piece. Like, I don't know if this is making sense. Let me do this, and then let me just log the grid at the end. Instead of returning it, I'm just going to log it and just see what we're dealing with. I need to actually call the function. So put piece on grid. Cannot read property -1 of undefined on line 100. So it's probably not -3. Unit index could be, oh, I put greater than or equal to 2. I think I'm supposed to put greater than 2. Cannot read 0 of undefined. So this is undefined, meaning that current piece, and it shouldn't be current piece, it should be current piece.shape. Yeah, let's try that. Assignment to constant variable, line 98. So that's because I put grid as a const. Let's do a let. Now let's see. So we have a T piece. I literally think that worked, guys. Yeah, I mean, I think so, because if we were to put in a T piece, it would be, there'd be 1 in the middle on the top row, 1 piece, and there is here, and then on the second row there would be 3, and there is. So I think that worked. Okay, that is awesome, but I want to draw the piece because I want to see it visually. I mean, I'm pretty freaking sure that that worked, but I want to see it. So we're gonna have to add some logic inside of draw grid, and I think all we really need to do is add the class name to make it turn that color. So we can add it here. Let's say if, okay, what do we want to rely on? If unit dot, what does unit look like? If unit dot ID, if unit dot ID, if it has an ID, then we know. Let's actually go by type. I mean, doesn't matter. Let's just go by type. Then let's say unit element dot class list dot add, and let's give it unit dot type, because unit dot type is like T or O, which is the class name here. If unit dot type unit L class list dot add unit dot type save. Come on, work. That is beautiful. That is beautiful. So if I refresh it, we get a different piece. Oh man, that is nice. I need some coffee. Let's do this. All right. So I don't know how much further I'm going to get, but I'm going to try to go as far as I can before I'm like, all right, I need to think about this more. So, okay, that works with putting a piece on the grid, but now the question is, what about moving a piece down? Because right now we're just saying move down, which is here. But we want to actually move the piece down, and this is where stuff's going to get weird. All right, so let's create a function called move piece, const move piece. And I think I want, I think I want to reuse this function for each direction you can move a piece. So there's only 3 directions you can move a piece in Tetris: left, right, or down. And right now we're only going to care about the down part. So let's add a direction here and then a switch statement. And we'll switch on direction. And for now, we'll just take care of the down case. All right, cool. So in the case of down, we want to, I'm going to look at the stream really quick, see what you guys, 7 viewers. Thanks guys for coming out and checking this out. We're going to keep going. Now, it's kind of interesting because my internet's apparently slow. If anything is glitchy or audio is messed up, let me know. I'll be checking the chat every 5 to 10 minutes or so. Okay, I think I know what I got to do. I need to loop through the grid, and then let's say I'm looping through the grid and I get to a piece, and the piece is occupied by a Tetris piece, or the grid unit is occupied by a Tetris piece. What I want to do is then move that down a row using the same unit index, but just increase the row index by 1. But see, if I get to here, then I would be moving this piece into a piece that's already occupied. Oh man, it's building the grid over and over again. That's crazy. I think I forgot one piece. When I draw the grid, I probably need to say grid dot, or like, let me put this outside of here. I think what I need to do is that, and then say grid L dot inner HTML is equal to an empty string. Let's see if that fixes. Cool, that is not redrawing a brand new grid underneath this one any longer. Cool. So I think I need to loop backwards. Because if I loop backwards through this, when I get to this piece, it'll move it down. There's nothing there. This piece, move it down. And then when I get here, yes. I need to loop backwards. Okay. But I need to loop backwards in this case, but there are cases where I should not loop backwards. For instance, if I'm moving the piece to the left, I don't want to move backwards because then we'll have the same problem. So I'll have to loop forwards in some directions and backwards in some other directions. That's just awesome. So I have to loop backwards here. So let's start looping backwards. And I have to do a 2-dimensional for loop. So might as well draw the skeleton out. So for let I equal the grid dot length minus 1. We want to keep looping as long as I is greater than or equal to 0, and then we want to say I minus minus. And then we want to do the same thing. Let j equal grid I dot length, because that's the row, minus 1. J is greater than or equal to 0, and then j minus minus. Okay. So now we're effectively looping backwards through the rows and the units. Okay. So while we're looping, if we land on like a block that has an ID, if there's an ID present, instead of it being an empty object, then we want to move it down 1. So let's say if grid ij, because grid ij, I guess I can just like, let's say const current unit is equal to grid ij. Whoa. And we'll say current unit. So if current unit dot ID, so if the current unit has an ID, then we know we're on a piece. So let's move that piece down 1. And here I am mutating the grid. That's fine. I'll come back and make this functional later. But I just need to like get this logic out of my brain because it's starting to hurt my head. If current unit dot ID, then we want to say grid I plus 1, so the row below it, j is equal to current unit. I have to cough. Okay. And then we want to set current unit equal to an empty object. I think. Let's save it. What happens? Oh, I need to call the function. Move piece. So we'll call move piece with a string that represents the direction down. Let's see what happens. Okay, nothing happened. Let's see what's going on. 117. Current unit is, it should be a let. Or wait, what? Oh. I guess. Cool. That's cool. So what's happening is it is moving it down, but it's not resetting the previous. Man. It's probably very obvious what I need to do, but I'm just kind of, my brain's tired. Okay. So I can't do it by reference, so I might as well just get rid of. Might as well just get rid of that. So that is working. Oh, current unit is not defined. Gotcha. So I'm not using that variable anymore because it's going to cause problems. Nice. Okay. So my guess is when it reaches the bottom, it's going to break because I'm not checking. I don't know if it's going to break or not. Is it going to break? Yeah, I think it's going to break. Let's find out. Okay, so we need to say and here. I is less than or equal to the length of the grid, that length minus 2. Because we want to check and make sure that we're like, we want to make sure, did I say less than? Okay. I think that's correct. Let me just verify that before I explain it. Okay. Else, we want to set the piece, the current piece. Set, so current piece equal to an empty object. Let's see if that does it. Ooh, what just happened? Huh? All right, so that means gotcha. Okay, so we only want to check this particular. Sure. Okay, so basically the logic is just messed up, but the idea is to check whether or not we're all the way down here. So that would be I length minus 2, right? 0, 1, 2. Man. That's what happens when you drink too much coffee and fry your brain on programming. Okay. So that just like interesting, right? So maybe that was possibly not the right logic, but I was on the right track. This should be, instead of less than or equals, should be less than. And I'm going to keep this part out, and I'm going to speed up the grid so I don't have to wait that long. Let's just make it like 200 instead of 1,000. And let's see if it stops at the right spot. Okay, wow, that was crazy. What am I doing? If, okay, and you know what? We're looping backwards. This is the wrong logic. Let me think for a second. So we no longer want to, so if I plus 1, that's the logic we want. If I plus 1 Ah, okay. So if I plus 1 is greater than or equal to, no, it is greater than the length minus 1, grid.length minus 1. If I plus 1, if we try to push that down, if I plus 1 is greater than the length of the grid minus 1, then we actually don't want to run this. So instead, we want to say that. I think that's the correct logic. Okay. Kind of. That was kind of the correct logic. I think I know why that happened, but it stopped. If this piece stops at the right spot, then I think we're on the right track. Okay. The reason why is because we didn't set the piece. So now we have to say if, and then use this logic to determine to set the piece. So else if this, except for instead of greater than or equals, we're going to say less than. I'm sorry, greater than. Then we want to say current piece is equal to empty object. Now that should fix the case. Oh, goodness. I plus 1 is greater than. Why is that? Maybe you guys have an idea. Maybe you guys are like, hey, it's this. Nope. You should add some comments in parts of the code. It will help with thinking over the code. You're correct. Alice Anderson. Is that your Alice Anderson? Alice Anderson? That is correct. You are right. I should be putting comments there because this is confusing code. But yeah, I should be doing that. All right. So what's happening here is really interesting. I need to be checking. So first of all, that's going to flatten it out at the bottom, right? Yeah, so I know what the problem is. I need to check whether or not, but it is the same logic. Oh my gosh. I plus 1, else if I plus 1 is greater than I just did this and it didn't work. If it is greater than grid.length minus, oh, I'm looping backwards. I keep forgetting I'm looping backwards. That's what it is, I bet. Bet you. Sorry, I know I'm kind of talking out loud more than I am explaining. Thinking out loud more than I am explaining, but let's just see if this works. Oh, I need to actually put the... Bummer. I thought I had it. I plus 1 is greater than possibly or equal to. That just sends it on down. So basically, this is where I might be stuck for a second. Which is silly because this seems to me like a simple mistake that I just wrote and I could usually find it, but I'm going to take a few more minutes, guys, to look at this and see if I can figure out where I'm going wrong, and then I will also be checking comments. If I'm doing something stupid, just let me know. I know it's also kind of confusing code, so let's say I just talk through this one more time. So I'm looping backwards, and I'm going to actually stop this. I'll put it on like every 20 seconds. That way it's not distracting me. So we're looping backwards, and we're saying if the unit we're on has an ID, then we know we're on a piece. And if the current row that we're on through this iteration plus 1 is less than or equal to the length of the grid minus 1, then we want to go ahead and move it down 1. So I plus 1 less than or equal to, I think this is where things get weird, because it could also be that I need to be taking into account the height of the piece. Okay, so that's not it. What I really think I need to be doing is saying, like, if I plus 1 okay, let's say the length is 22. I'm gonna put this like this. Let's say let's just draw the grid before this interval. Okay, so the length of this is 22. Let's say we're on the final pass and we want to no longer push the piece down anymore. So we're on 22. That would be index I in that loop. I would be equal to 21. So that would be less than 22 would be true. So I plus 1 would be 22, less than. So less than or equals is bad right off the bat. So I plus 1 should be, so 21 is 1 less. Man, I fried my brain on this. Man, oh man. Well, guys, looks like I got stumped. It's probably a simple mistake too, but it happens from time to time. So basically, it looks like where I'm going to have to continue next time is right here, but I can explain the problem really quick. Basically, we're trying to make sure that when we get to the bottom, we don't want to run this logic anymore. So basically, if we're at the very bottom, this piece is here, we don't want to run this logic anymore. Instead, if we are there, we want to go ahead and reset the current piece back to an empty object. That way, down here inside of this if statement, if current piece.id will actually be false, and instead we will run this code again, which generates a new piece, and then that piece will begin falling. So somewhere in my logic, I basically probably have something very simple off that I just can't seem to catch right now. So I'm going to run through this one more time, and then probably have to cut it off for now. So we're looping through backwards. And if the current iteration, the unit that we're on as we're iterating, if that has an ID, then we know we're on a piece. And if we know we're on a piece, we want to move that piece down as long as also the next row down exists. Okay, so if I plus 1 is less than or equal to the length of the grid, so I got to think about that for a second now, because let's say we're on 21. This is the 21st index. I would be 21. I plus 1 is 22. And therefore that should be false. So I plus 1 is 22. Really, I mean, I don't need to do it that way, but so if I plus 1 is less than the length of the grid, no, minus 1 makes sense. Gosh, man. I can't believe I'm stumped on something this simple. Yeah, I'm going to have to close it off for now. Well, thanks for coming out. I hope you guys have a great day. In about a week, I'm going to continue this, and I'm probably going to laugh really hard. Check out my Twitter if you want to. I'll be sure to post what the mistake was, and I'll continue this live stream next week. Thanks, guys.